This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Hello, everyone. This is Gerard Robinson, and welcome back to another session of In Character. As you know, I have an opportunity to meet with wonderful people across the country to talk about a number of items within K-20 education. And you know that once I do that, I do a one-on-one conversation with some of the people who are on. Today, I've got Christopher from Connecticut. Christopher, welcome back.
Hi, how are you? Glad to be back.
Doing well. So the last time we had a chance to talk shop, you shared some great things about your work and what you do. Are there a couple of items that you want to do a deeper dive on right now for the viewing and listening audience? Or did something transpire between the last time we spoke and today that you think our viewers and listeners would want to know?
Sure. I guess I'll begin with some background information. I know that the original conversation that we were having was about the importance of educators running for elected office. And one of the things I wasn't able to share that I think is worth noting, for many years after being named the State Teacher of the Year and being catapulted into this advocacy role, you know, one day you're a teacher in your classroom and maybe you're influencing slightly beyond your classroom, other adults and children in the building. And then the next day someone calls you up and says, well, now you represent 50,000 people. Like, what do you have to say? And so for a long time, from 2007, when I was the State Teacher of the Year, to 2017, I spent a lot of time building a network and advocating for what I thought was best in public education for kids and for teachers and just for the profession as a whole. And it wasn't always easy. There was a lot of figuring out, and you know, I always operated under the assumption that you had these good intentioned policymakers who wanted to do well, do right by kids, but didn't understand the implications of their decisions in a classroom. And that as a teacher leader, I was going to go and I was going to close that gap of understanding and talk to them about, you know, what good policy would look like in good classroom practice. And what I came to realize in my reflection is, you know, I was advocating from like my perspective. And so in 2017, 10 years in, I had this epiphany. Well, I'm going to run for public office so that I can be the policymaker that people are coming to. And I can maybe influence the other policymakers around me to help them understand certain things, not just about public education, but about my community where I live. And I learned really quickly upon being in that seat of the policymaker, what it was like to talk to the teacher who wasn't the policymaker. And it really balanced me and improved my overall effectiveness as someone who just wanted to bring forth positive change. And understanding that whole realm of, you know, the parameters of like what you can do and budget constraints and all other kinds of things that policymakers have to consider helped me to become more effective. And so I just thought like that reflection is worth noting, in that like for every passionate educator who wants to affect positive change, one of the best tools that someone could have is to understand the role of a policymaker. And if they have it in them, and if they have an opportunity, I would say run for public office. You'll be more effective as a teacher leader.
So here's a question that comes to mind based upon something you just said. By any chance, do you come from a family where you had an elected official or two, or are you the first one in your family to take that step?
It's funny. There's a story behind this. And so, you know, I'm the youngest of three sons. And all throughout middle school and high school, I ran for student council officers. I served as the class president of my class in the high school. And I was always the son that was being groomed for a life in public service. I wanted nothing more than to be in a public service position. In fact, I applied to college to the University of Richmond. That school had the only undergraduate school of leadership studies. I worked on Capitol Hill for 2 members of Congress as part of my college internship. I was ready to go. And when I was sitting there one day in the Cannon House office building, answering phones and responding to mail, I just kind of had this reflection, and I said, this is not interesting. This interview is kind of boring. And I looked around me and I looked at the people I admired. I looked, and I'm from Connecticut, so I looked at like Chris Dodd.
Yeah.
And I saw that Chris Dodd had served his country. And he was a Peace Corps volunteer, and I wasn't cut out for the military. And I said, maybe that's something. And so I applied for the Peace Corps, and I served for 2 years. And it was at that time when I was in Central America as a Peace Corps volunteer. I lived across the street from a school, that I had this epiphany where public service can be completed as an educator. You can serve your community as an educator. And so I had a pivot. And I got out of the Peace Corps. I came home. I could speak Spanish, and I decided that I was going to become a Spanish teacher. And I did an alternate certification. I was certified in 12 weeks, and I was in the job that I hold today, teaching Spanish, 21 years later, or more than that. 22 years later. So, and so like throughout that time, like I've always had this interest. And that's what, when I got put in the position to advocate for teachers, it was almost a natural position for me, because I always had this vision of like representing people and trying to advocate for what was best. And then it was 17 years out of the Peace Corps where I finally made that move to run for office. And so I got there, and it was a longer route than I had hoped for, but it's nice to be in the best of both worlds. I get to teach and I get to serve my community.
It is good to hear someone make the link between public service and teaching, because often when we hear public service, we think elected official or appointed position. And I'm also familiar with the center my wife used to teach at the University of Richmond Law School. And so I've had an opportunity to do a couple of events with that leadership program, which is very unique. Well, as we close, if you were to give, let's say, a Christopher or Christine who's a freshman in college, advice on how they should think about public servant or servitude moving them forward, what would you say to them, knowing what you know today?
Well, I would say Chris Dodd once said, don't study political science, study history. So I would say make sure you're grounded in history. I think that's important for anyone who is going to get involved in public service, because you get a broad perspective of why and how things happen. And I think it's relevant in contemporary times. I would say that have like a sector that you're the expert in. So my expertise is in public education. I still have to make decisions about roads, about sewer treatment plants, about all kinds of things, And so, but like I can speak authoritatively in my position about education, and my colleagues on the council, Democratic or Republican, respect that. And when the people that understand about construction and building talk about how we're gonna, get the public library rebuilt at a lower price, I respect and I listen to what they have to say. And if you can have that kind of a culture on your elected board or in your position, it leads to collaboration. And we all know that the best change comes through collaboration rather than go it alone. And so that would be my advice. Know what you're good at and be the authority in a sector, and then collaborate and lean on your colleagues who have their expert knowledge in other sectors.
Well, Christopher, that's great advice. And who knows, maybe 10 or 15 years from now, someone will say, you know what, I was listening to In Character, and it was Christopher who made me leave political science and study history. and pissed off my dad when we studied political science, but we'll leave that alone for now. Well, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. This is exactly why we do one-on-one sessions. Keep up the good work, and look forward to having you again on In Character.
It's been a pleasure to be speaking with you today, and
Okay.
we'll cross paths soon.
Sure will. Take care.